TelecomTV, where ICT connects.
Hello, this is TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick, reporting from Northern California, from Silicon Valley, in fact, where we are attending the 4th ETSI meeting of the Industry Standardization Group, that's the ISG, on NFV. Quite a mouthful, but nonetheless, that's what we're doing. And I'm talking with Stephen Teitzel of IBM. Stephen, welcome. We're here at this meeting of the ISG Group. It hasn't been in existence for very long, but it's very important and vital to the future of NFV. What has been achieved to date?
Well, I think what's been achieved to date in this short time is the coming together of both the operators and the providers, the vendors, to be able to come up very rapidly in the terms of telco with the beginning of a standard to move telco from what it's been to a very disruptive environment of a virtualized world. So I think it's really quite amazing if you take a look at what's really transpired in probably less than 9 months of actual work going on with NFV and the Standards Committee to bring together the people to get it moving. And there's a sense of urgency around it, I think, that's driving that. And that's why we see so much being achieved in a short amount of time.
And why do you think this work is so very important, not just to the industry in general, but to service providers in particular?
Well, the service providers have been fighting this problem of data growth that is paralleled then by the cost of shipping that data around. And in a mobile world, that's just increasing incredibly fast. To that effect, right, the service providers have to figure out a way to break that hold that data growth has on costs. And what they're looking for are not incremental solutions. They're looking for radical shifts in cost. And NFV, right, really is the key to that, to be able to shift radically the cost, not only of the capital that's spent on the network, but also then the operating costs that are spent on the network as well. And so that's what we're seeing, and that's what's pushing this so fast. And that's why there's such an urgency around this.
What kind of an impact do you think that NFV is going to have on service provider business models going forward? And when do you think the hype surrounding NFV will subside and we will see reality?
Well, I think the business models are the standard ones that we see today, but I think there's an emerging set that we haven't even begun to think about, because the deployment model of NFV is really wide open. It's very, very different than what it's been, right? When you begin to take a look at geographical dispersion of this core network, and all of a sudden it's a very distributed environment that's very virtual. Now I have the ability to not only have remote pieces of the network distributed around, but I also have the ability to have a whole different set of operating models. I can begin to share the world of IT and the world of network resources together because it's running on a common platform. In fact, that's one of the use cases that the Standards Group has put together to be able to show that. And if you think about that, that's a very powerful thing, because now I can use excess capacity to burst over to that. Well, if I can burst over to that, could I burst over to spare capacity that's maybe not on my premises, but on somebody else's premises? And that opens up a whole new set of operating models. Then all of a sudden you begin to think about, well, if I have a cloud environment, I can begin to spin these functions up and begin to provide portions of it, into a broadband environment, whether that's a mobile broadband or a fixed broadband environment. So all of a sudden the data models begin to shift all over the place, and it allows for very rapid expansion and bursting of traffic and things like that, but also expansion of companies into new areas that they haven't seen before. And I think that's the key with this whole model. Is one is they're going after for the radical shift, but if you really look at the documents, one of the things they're about is innovation. How can they speed innovation, right? How can they speed innovation and new things into the marketplace faster? And that's one of the key things that's going to change a lot of the business models that we see in how operators are operating today.
Okay, but what about the hype?
There's a process that you have to kind of sort through it. What's really interesting is we're seeing a number of very pragmatic and practical POCs beginning to occur. And in fact, that's one of the things here in this group this week that they're working on is establishing some of those POCs, but those are already beginning to occur in incremental amounts. And what we're seeing are functions of the network being spun up virtually, being operated even in a live production environment. And we've seen that happen even over the last 12 months. Things from, be it a virtual PBX to all the way to a virtual EPC, a packet core. And so those things are happening now. So it's not just hype, right? It's actual things that are occurring. I guess I see 2014 as kind of the period that we're going to see a lot of POCs and trials, especially as the working group works through this for the next year. And then what you're going to see is the field deployments begin to occur and click in 2015 and 16. And we need that time, really, because not only to establish the technology on this, but also then to establish the operating processes and procedures around it, and then begin to think through those operating models that we were talking about a minute ago, and how do we really implement that as a business. Because the key to this is it's more than just a technology shift. It's more than an operating shift. This is a real business transformation like we haven't seen in a long time. This is very disruptive to the business, and it's going to be interesting and quite exciting to see what happens. So, yeah, there's a bit of hype to it, but pragmatically, you're going to see 14, 15, and 14 is when the POCs occur. 15 and 16 is when I see those deployments really occurring.
And on the other side of the coin, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing the service provider community when it comes to the adoption of NFV, and how, in your view, can they be overcome?
Well, I think one of the things that we're dealing with, I think everybody's working on the areas of how do I virtualize a particular function or a piece, and we're working on that. We've had, there's very smart minds amongst the vendor community working on those issues and bringing those to bear. The thing that I think concerns a lot of operators as I've talked to them is it's not so much the function, even though they believe that the function will come up to speed with a specific function equipment. What they're concerned about is the operating environment. This is a new world, right? And how do we begin to operate in this world? Because now I've got a world that could morph not at manual speeds, but at machine speeds. And if all of a sudden I begin to do things like fault analysis in a world that was, how do I track the then current world that was when I'm trying to solve and do root cause analysis? How do I begin to manage a world that is changing at machine speeds rather than manual reconfiguration? I'm not talking about taking days and weeks to reconfigure the network. I'm talking about, minutes to reconfigure the network. And so it can morph very quickly. That's one of the biggest challenges that we see. And so we call that, this idea of real-time OSS, or OSS as the network occurs, right? How do I track that as the network occurs, not after the fact, not historically, right, but as it occurs? And I think one of the keys to that is how do we create an OSS that can be real-time and also be ahead of real-time? And I think that's where we're going to see analytics come into play, and I think that's going to be a critical part of this as well, because analytics then will give me the ability to not only see the patterns that I can't see today, but also begin to predict those things that I can't see. And that's going to become critical because I can't move at machine speeds. I'm going to have to move ahead of machine speeds. So I think those are going to be critical things, the real-time OSS and the analytics.
You're with IBM, and you're working with Juniper and other people. Can you tell us about what that collaboration means and why it's important to you and why it's important to the industry?
Well, it's interesting. IBM has a diverse set of portfolio of competencies that we bring to the table: hardware, software, services, and services not just in technology but also in business. And so there's a wide range of things that we bring to the table. So from an enabling perspective, right, from a technology enabling perspective, what we're seeing is, we're a premier cloud provider in the world today. And we believe that we have some real core competencies to take that into the world of the network and really enable this new world of the network that's going to become virtualized. In addition to that, we've got an incredible set of services, right, that can begin to do the integration of this. We don't have the functions, right? I mean, the partners that we have, the ecosystem of players out there that are creating functions today, those functions exist. What we're concerned about is how do you enable those functions? How do you bring together an ecosystem that, in essence, is NFV ready, right, that can be managed, that can be orchestrated, right, well together? And how do you open up that community? And I think that's one of the things that's key here that I see going on, is really trying to tie into open standards, right, so that there is this openness, that we can grab the innovation that's out there and move quickly with that innovation in an open world. So, from an IBM perspective, we have the ability to integrate those technologies together. The other thing that's unique is I was saying this was a business transformation. One of the key gems that we have is a piece of services that is really about business consulting and about business transformation. And one of the things that IBM has done well is transform itself, right? And we've had to do that to survive. And in essence, this is a transformation that the telcos are going through. And so in the same way, right, that business consulting team that we can have can help telcos begin to go through that transformation process that they have to do, whether that's a business operation or a business as a whole, either one of those perspectives.
Steve Teitzel, thank you very much.
You bet.
TelecomTV, where ICT connects.